good to see y'all. I'd give you a group hug right now if I could. Glad to be home, glad to be with y'all. Had a fascinating time in Israel this past Tuesday morning. Early in the morning, Deb and I were standing in Hostage Square. Some of the families were there of the hostages. People were gathering, a lot of the folks there, a lot of the Israelis from Tel Aviv gathered there. News corporations were there. And we were waiting anxiously, knowing that they were meeting. I think they had met the night before in Sharm el-Sheikh and would be meeting again that day. And little did we realize when we decided that we would go that they would be released on our last day there. So in the morning, prayerfully, hopefully, and I hope you're praying for it, we prayed for them there in the square at the request of a Jew who asked me to pray for the hostages and for the peace of Jerusalem, that they would be released. It was somber the day we were there, but they were dancing in the streets. And I don't know what, you can say what you want to about politics here in the States. They love America and they love the president over there. I can tell you that. So just thankful and prayerful that all of that just continues in the direction that it's going. We had a great time. If you're ever going to visit Israel, now's the time to do it. There's total difference. The government actually in Lebanon has been handed back to the Lebanese. They actually are now in charge of the government and not the Syrians or the Iranians. There's a new government in Syria that is very hopeful, and they are in dialogue, and there is no ill feeling between them and Israel at this point. Hamas just about does not exist anymore, and so there's not that issue. Hezbollah is done in. The Lebanese now are actually disarming Hezbollah there in the north. We had a great time, walked right straight up to the border of Lebanon and Israel with a lieutenant colonel over there. And I told him about you, Lieutenant Colonel. I said, I got a lieutenant colonel in my service every Sunday. And great guy. He was with the IDF for 30 some odd years. Anyway, it was a great trip, but it's good to be home. Your mission group in England did a fabulous job. They literally do the work of an evangelist while they're there. They not only encourage the churches there and spend time with the people out of the churches and the pastors, but they were out knocking on doors. Really something we probably should be doing here. Anyway, knocking on doors. Deb was out knocking on doors, and after I taught, I showed up and showed her how to do it. No, they wouldn't open the door for me, but they'd open it for her. So I'd stand back off around the corner and let her get them to the door. And then, of course, she did all of the talking anyway, and did a great job of it. She shared Christ with numbers of people. And they're so open to the gospel now. But anyway, I wish I could talk to you about it, but next Sunday I'll try to bring you a couple of shots and show you a couple of things. And my wife, one of the things that I've always wanted to do is go on a dig at an archaeological site. Chorazin. You remember Jesus said, Jesus' ministry was basically in a triangle between Capernaum and Bethsaida and Chorazin. And so in those three villages are right here on the northeastern side of the Sea of Galilee. Chorazin is up on the mountain part. And so Jesus would leave Capernaum and go to Bethsaida and then, hike up to Chorazin. And I've never been there. And they say everything's underground. Well, they're excavating it now. I had one of my dreams come true. I got to be with an archaeologist who showed me how to get down on the ground and start digging and working through the thing of excavation. I want you to know this woman found the oldest piece found at Chorazin as of yet. Not me. No, it wouldn't happen to me, but she did. She went over to the archaeologist and she said, well, I found this a little small piece of pottery about like your small finger. He looked at that and he hollered. He says, oh my, do you know what you have found? He said, this is the oldest piece. This is between 200 and 300 AD. Even the synagogue there dates to 500 AD. He said, this is the earliest piece we have found. So my wife has found the piece that actually proves that Chorazin existed during the time of Christ. So she is now archaeologically famous and had no idea what she was doing. So take your Bibles, go with me to Ecclesiastes. I'm glad this is a kind of a holiday Sunday, and I can do more teaching, and that's what I want to do to get you into the book of Proverbs, into the book of Ecclesiastes. Solomon wrote Song of Solomon, he wrote Proverbs, and he wrote Ecclesiastes, and I think he wrote them in that order. I think he wrote Song of Solomon when he was very young. He was head over heels in love. He was crazy in love, if you read Song of Solomon and just think through what he's saying. He is just very much in love with the Shulamite. And I think later in life, he gets to the point about midway in life, looking at his career, looking at all that he's done, and he begins to see the real success of life comes with what he gives you in Proverbs. Though he did not do all of that, he understands how you get to success. And then you come to Ecclesiastes. I think he writes it as an old man. And he looks back over his life and he says, this is what I really found. Now, listen to me carefully, because I'm going to give you what I think is the best understanding of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. Proverbs, I honestly think that what Solomon gives to you in Proverbs is the way to success in life. In fact, one of the best things you could do is every morning, if you're able to have breakfast as a family together, is that you dads take Proverbs and read one or two Proverbs. You don't have to read a whole chapter at the time, but read a couple of Proverbs while your children are sitting there at the table and talk about it before they go off to school. Do that while they're children and as they get older children. And then when they become teenagers, pull out the book of Ecclesiastes. Since they've gone through now Proverbs for all these years, you've talked about that. How do you get success in life? Watch, because Ecclesiastes comes and says you've had success and you've discovered that success is meaningless without God. That's the whole of the book of Proverbs. That's everything. Ecclesiastes. That's the whole of Ecclesiastes, is that life just becomes meaningless when your life is out of sync with God, when you're spiritually out of sync. Back in 1995, Justin Timberlake came out with a group called In Sync. They were not near as good as the Backstreet Boys, and the Backstreet Boys were still a little better than Boys to Men, but that's not the in sync I'm talking about. I'm talking about being in sync with God. Your life being in balance, not out of balance with God. That in my life every day I am striving to live a God-led life. Now, he's going to show you what happens in the midst of all of that. But life is held in a precarious, delicate balance. That's true of this world. This world sits on its axis at 23.1 degrees. When that gets out of whack, or if that gets out of whack and moves too much one way, or too much, we're either going to burn completely up by the sun, or we will freeze to death in darkness. The same is true with the oxygen, the atmosphere that we breathe. It is 23.1% oxygen. Not all of it is oxygen, the atmosphere we believe, but 23.1% is. And that is a delicate balance, because if there were more oxygen, there would just be spontaneous fires breaking out everywhere. Oxygen feeds fire. If it were less than that, you and I couldn't live. It would not be enough oxygen for us to live on. And the interesting thing is that the earth's crust sets all of that up in balance. That if the earth's crust were any thinner, then it would not be 23.1% oxygen. If it were any thicker, you would not be able to live on this planet. Same thing is true with the moon. The moon is held in a delicate balance. If it were any closer to the earth or any further away, because the magnetism of the moon controls the tides, the whole of the earth would be inundated with the oceans twice in a 24-hour period, and it could not sustain life here. Same is true with your body. Your body is in very delicate balance. You let your blood pressure get out of balance and you'll find out. You let your potassium levels get out of that balance and you do a lot. I've gone to the hospital to see people whose potassium out of balance. They hallucinate. They can die from it. You can die when your potassium gets out of balance. And listen, let me tell you something. Your sugar. The doctor, I don't know if he's in this service, he tells me all the time that I'm too sweet. All the time. He's just saying, you're just so sweet. And my sugar's out of balance. I have to work hard and live in misery because I can't eat what I want to eat. Listen, if they tell me I've got 6 months to live one day, rocky road, Krispy Kreme to the day I die. If I got 6 months to live, I'm going out fat and happy. You get your sugar level. I'm telling you, it's a terrible thing when your sugar levels are out like that. All of your life is held in such a delicate balance, and when your life gets out of balance, either mentally or emotionally or physically, you get out of balance physically, and I tell you, it's hard, it's tough. You have all kind of issues and problems, and we are living so much of our lives spiritually out of balance, which creates so many problems for life. Marital issues out of balance, parental issues out of balance, financial issues, vocational work out of balance, relationships out of balance. All of these things get out of balance when your life is out of sync spiritually. When you are out of balance spiritually. That is exactly what he's saying here. It's exactly what Solomon is telling us. And if there was any man whose life, and I'm going to show you this at the end of this message, if I can get to it quick enough. I want you to understand, if there's anybody that can talk about life being out of balance, it's this guy right here, Solomon, because his life started out incredibly. In fact, let me tell you, Solomon could have been the third person of the Old Testament that nothing negative was ever said of. He starts out that way. There are two other men in the Old Testament that are like this. Do you know who they are? We preached on both of them, Joseph and Daniel. Joseph and Daniel are the two men of the Old Testament of whom the scriptures have nothing negative to say, and Solomon was well on his way there until he blew it all up. And I'll just introduce that to you at the end. I'm going to preach through this. I don't know how long it's going to take us, but it is exactly where we are today. You could say over this book, Ecclesiastes, that American success, the dream of American success, has become our own nightmare. That's what he's saying. Now, the title is interesting in itself. Ecclesiastes comes from the Greek word, not the Hebrew word, which is the word for fellowship, ecclesia, or ekletos, which is the gathering or the fellowship. We use that to describe the church, the ecclesia, the church of God, the fellowship, the koinonia, the ecclesia, and the koinonia of the church. So it's a Greek word that's used here in the Old Testament. The Old Testament name, the Hebrew name, is Koheleth. Now, some of your scriptures will use that name there in the first chapter, Koheleth. Others of you will have something different, like preacher. Well, Koheleth in Hebrew means the accumulator, the one who accumulates, or the gatherer, or the one who brings people together, who brings in a congregation, who gathers people together and preaches. Preacher is a good translation of the Hebrew word koheleth, and that's what Solomon is calling himself here. By the way, I think it's Solomon who writes this, and if I get a chance, I'll say something about that later. I don't spend time wasting time on what the Bible already tells me. So I accept that it's Solomon. It's pretty clear. It says he's the son of David, that is king. None of the others come close to what this guy is doing in this book. They couldn't write it. Only Solomon could write this. Well, here's the interesting thing. He is the preacher that is here. He is the one who's gathered the people. So he's not speaking as a king. He is speaking as a teacher. He gathers them together to lecture them. He's going to give them insight. In fact, this is not in any of my notes, but I'm going to tell you, at some point I'll get to it. You're going to discover that Solomon used to hold conferences. That's the way we would understand. He would hold conferences. People would come in from everywhere to listen to him speak on various subjects. And he would get up and he would lecture on all of these subjects because he was the wisest man in the world, and everybody wanted to go hear him. I always wanted to go hear John R.W. Stott, never had the opportunity. I always wanted to go hear Francis Schaeffer, never had the opportunity. Always wanted to go hear J.I. Packer, and I got the opportunity to have breakfast with the man, just the two of us, early one morning as he came to speak at Southwestern. And so it was kind of like that. Oh, so-and-so's going to be here, and so we want to go see that, go hear that, and be there and say, hey, we were there when Solomon spoke about ichthyology. You can go look that up. Ichthyology. He spoke on that. Well, nobody else was talking about it in his day. And it was his reputation was so wide and so varied that the Queen of Sheba, the area we know as Ethiopia today, heard about this, and she said, no man can be that great. No man can be all that is being said about him. And so she traveled up to Jerusalem to hear and to meet and to listen to, like the President of the United States today. He's going to fly, I think, into Egypt. He's going to be there with all of these other leaders from around the world, and many of them coming just to see him because he's brokered something that nobody else has been able to do. And so it was that way with Solomon. They all wanted to come. World leaders wanted to come see him. And so she comes up to see him, and she was so blown away with the wisdom of Solomon that the Queen of Sheba says the half of it has not even been told. So you can imagine. Now that just gives you a little bit of the understanding of what all is here in this. But now Solomon begins with two things that I want you to see. Number one, life becomes pointless when life is out of balance with God. It's just pointless. All of life becomes pointless no matter what you have, what you do, what you accomplish, what you achieve. All of it is pointless when you have no relationship with God. Now listen to what he does in verse 1, 2, and 3, because what he's going to do there is this. He's going to basically come and give you three axioms here, or three principles here, or three things, 3 points of an outline. He's going to give you the person, he's going to give you the principle, and then he's going to give you the purpose of this. So I begin, verse 1, the words of the preacher, Koheleth, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, I know this is Solomon because I can look over in chapter 2, and in chapter 2, I read about how rich he was. It says, I collected in verse 8 for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces, and I provided for myself male and female singers and the pleasures of men and many concubines. He was buying up people. He was buying up things, and he collected for himself silver and gold. By the way, I figured this up last night. At the current price of gold, an ounce today, Solomon brought in $5 billion a year just in gold. just in gold. Now, maybe that doesn't impress y'all, but I could live off of that. That's pretty impressive salary. He was the wealthiest man of his day. He wasn't only the most brilliant man of his day, or of any day, he was the wealthiest man of his day. And I know it because of his wisdom. Listen, he talks about this in chapter 1, verse 16. Behold, I've magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. So, no question to me, this preacher here is Solomon. And in the last part of his life, he calls himself a preacher because he's gathered the people together. And he says, let me tell you how to live life. That if you want your success, listen, if you want your success to be meaningful, then God has to be more important than your success. Number two, the second thing is look at this. Look at the principle. Look at the axiom here. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That word's going to be used about 38 times in this little book of Ecclesiastes. It is a concept, and the concept is it's a hyperbole that uses this concept. When you walk out on a winter's day, say the temperature is 32 degrees, you go outside and you go like that, and all of this, warm air that hits the cold air is there. It's there for a moment, and then it just dissipates. It's gone. It's what James says about life. He says that's your life. He says you're just a vapor. You're just here for a moment, then your life is dissipated and gone. That's exactly what Solomon is saying here. That's what he's talking about. He's saying everything that you gather and get in life, it's here and then it's gone. He said, have you ever tried to grab that? I remember as a kid blowing that, trying to grab it fast enough to see if I could catch it. And you know what you had? Handful of nothing. That's the word vanity. It means absolutely nothing. It means emptiness, vacuous, meaninglessness, absurdity. It's the absurd. It's the pursuit of the absurd. It is anything along those lines of just nothing. That's the concept of the word. And so he starts off, the very first thing that he says here is vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. 5 times he says that. I think he wants you to understand everything is empty in this world when your life is out of sync with God. The third thing is this whole idea of purpose. What is the purpose of this book? The purpose of this book is summed up in this question: what advantage does man have in all his work, which he does under the sun? That's going to appear, that phrase will appear about 29 times, 28, 27 times throughout the book. And it means under the sun, it means life down here, average, everyday life down here on the earth, out of balance, out of sync with God. And he's going to describe it. All through this book, that's what he's going to do, is he's going to go through this and just describe it over and over and over in every single area. Well, Solomon was a man who had enough time and he had enough money to research this. If you look at this, I said in chapter 2, verse 1, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. He said, I've got all the time in the world to do this. I'm on nobody else's. I don't work for anybody. I have everybody that works for me. So I have unlimited time to do this, to test this, to do the research on this. And then he said, I had all of the money in the world. And I read you that verse. I've got all the money I need to see if this is actually true. If I can find something in life that will bring satisfaction to life. So he's going to set out in chapter 2 to do that. And we'll get there eventually over into chapter 2. So he's just looking at all of these things about life being out of sync. Now I'm going to give you 3 words this morning, one in this point 1, to help describe what he's talking about, and it's the word frustration. Pointlessness leads to frustration in life. I wake up one morning and I discover that I have reached the pinnacle of my career. I've gotten to the top. I've gotten the job that I always wanted. I've gotten the position that I always longed for. I've got the salary to go with it. I have got the control and the power that goes with the position of that office. I have achieved what I have always dreamed of, and in achieving that, I am just frustrated that I'm not satisfied still. See also America 2025. Because that's where most of us are. Many of us are in that place. If we've not reached the pinnacle, let me tell you what we're doing. We are running after it as hard and as fast as we can, doing everything we can to achieve it, to get there. And he says, once you get there, what have you got? In all honesty, what have you got? What did you achieve in life? But frustration, it just brings about nothing but frustration in your life. And do you know what frustration brings about? When you're frustrated, what happens with you? You get angry. Now, I'm going to start amening. Y'all too quiet. The last service, man, they're pretty alive. Y'all too quiet in here. Amen. When I get frustrated, what happens? I get a short temper. Amen. I get moody, amen. I get irritable, touchy. I get all of these kind of things when I am in frustration, and I tend to do what? Snap at people. You know, just kind of be short, be curt, be a little ugly, be a little mean. Why? Because I'm miserable. I've gotten what I wanted, and it's not made me happy. I've gotten what I've longed for. I've gotten what I've worked for. And in getting that, I've discovered that that does not make me happy. And I am frustrated because I've spent so many years and so much time and so much energy running after this thing. And I got it without God. I achieved it. And my life without God is frustrating and pointless. Welcome to Valleydale Baptist Church. That's where we are. You say, preacher, this is depressing. Hang on. just wait. It's not near as depressing as it's going to be. And this is Solomon talking about this. You know, I just went back in Windsor Castle again. I walked through that place and I just thought to myself, you reckon William ever chases Kate around this place? You know. What that would be like to chase your wife through Windsor Castle. Man, all the stuff, all the rooms, it'd take you a week to try to catch her in some place like that. And listen, that's what they've got over there now. Solomon had a palace he had built that was unreal. In fact, it was part of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And you begin to think to yourself, here's a guy who has attained it all, got it all, and he is now just living in frustration. Let me give you the second thing. And the second thing is this, repetitious. That is when you live life spiritually out of sync, life becomes repetitious. Now listen, because this is what Solomon writes. He says this, and he's going to give you 2 things here. One is the momentary, and the other is the immutable. The one is the change, and the other is the things that don't change. So you've got this momentary, and he comes in verse 4, and he says, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. He says, here's all this change that's going on. And it's interesting to me that he starts off with a generation that goes rather than starting off with a generation that comes and then a generation that goes. It shows you the reality of life. A generation goes. A generation is here. They're born, they live, they die, and they're forgotten. I can't tell you how many church graveyards I walked through when we were just over in Scotland and London. But I want to tell you something, nobody remembers those people. You know what Zinzendorf told all the Moravian missionaries that he sent out? He told them, he says, go and take the gospel, preach the gospel, live, die, and be forgotten. Not about you anyway. That's what he's saying. It's interesting here. That's what he's saying. A generation goes and a generation comes. Our generation, my generation, is going to die. And listen, a generation's going to come in behind it. And there is the earth that never changes in all of this. It is still the same earth. We change, but the earth, those things never do. That's the unmutable. Look at what he says in verse 5. The sun rises, the sun sets. You remember that? Sunrise, sunset, the song, swiftly fly the days. And hastening to its place, it rises there again. Blowing toward the south and turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling along. It's just endless. The wind is constantly blowing. The sun rises, the sun sets. It comes up tomorrow morning. It's immutable. It's not going to change. The blowing of the wind is not going to change. He comes in verse 7, he says, all the rivers flow into the sea, and the sea's not full to the place where the rivers flow. There they flow again. He says it's just a process. It's a cycle. It keeps going. It is this whole repetitious idea that things change and things don't change. Jean-Baptiste, the French writer, satirist, in the 1800s says, the more things change, the more things stay the same. And that's the frustrating part of life. That's the part of life that fatigues us. That's the second word I want to give you. Not just frustrating, but it wears you out. It's fatiguing that things are constantly changing, but things are constantly staying the same. And I feel like I'm caught in a world of change and no change. Change, no change. And it just wears you out. It wears on you. All the change in life wears on you. When things don't change, it wears on you. All the repetition, things going on over and over and over again, it just produces nothing but fatigue. You ever had your car? I don't think they do this anymore, but those of you that are old enough remember when your front line on your car got out of balance, what would it do? Eat your tires out. And then you'd have to go put a whole new set of tires on your car. And if you didn't fix that, the thing just got out of line. And to drive down the road in a car that's out of line, it just wears you out. It beats you up. Back when Trey turned 16, I had a red Jeep like I've got now, but it was only a 2-door and a soft top. And he turned 16. I said, all right, bud, what do you want to do? I'll go with you, do whatever. You want to go shooting? You want to go shoot skeet? You want to go, what is it? You want to go hunting, or what is it? He said, I want to go mudding in your Jeep. And it had been raining, and they were building a new subdivision not far from us, and it was just absolutely acres and acres of red mud in North Carolina. And I said, okay. I said, just don't flip the Jeep over. We'll go out there. So I drove him out there, drove him into the mud, got out and got in the other side, and he just knocked himself out driving that thing, just spinning it around and trying to go as fast as he could and get stuck and then get unstuck, all of that. So when he was through with it, I said, all right, we got to go clean this thing up. So we drove out. The first car wash I went to, they met me at the driveway. They said, you're not bringing that thing in here. That's too much mud. And so I eventually found a place where we could clean it, that they didn't turn me away. So we got out, and we washed it, and we washed, and we washed. It took us a couple of hours to clean that thing up. And so got it cleaned up. Later that week, I had to drive out of town, and as I drove out of town, I'd get up to about 30 to 40 miles an hour, and that thing would just start shaking like this. It just wear you out. The whole thing was out of balance, and I thought, what in the world is wrong with this thing? So I took it to one of my deacons who happened to be a mechanic, and when I went back to get it, he called me, he said, okay, he said, you can come pick it up. I went back to get it. He said, I had to put that thing up on the rack. And he said, I had to take a hammer and a chisel and get up into the underbelly of this thing and chisel out just caked in, dried red mud as hard as concrete. And I said, well, that thing like to beat me. He says, if you kept that up, he said, you would have gone through tires like you could not believe. And beyond that, he says, it would have created all of this stress fracture on part of the metal in this car. You know, metal can get stress fractures. Steel can get stress fractures. Iron can get, that's part of why the Titanic sank. It was not the great big metal plates that fell off of the ship or were cut by the ship. They found out that the little rivets that they put together had stress fractures in them from the time that they made them. There was a problem with them that when they got it in the sea, they just started popping off. Rivet by rivet by rivet by rivet, until that whole thing hit ice. And when it hit ice, it just fell apart. That's what he's saying here. He's saying life without God will do that to you. It will shake your insides out. It just becomes absolutely nothing but fatigue. It wears you out. Life wears you out. Going to work wears you out. Going home in the evening wears you out. Doing anything with your family wears you out. Do you want to know why? Your life is out of sync with God. You're spiritually out of sync. And not only that, there's a futility that goes with life when your life is out of sync. Here's the futility. Listen to what he says down in verse 8. All things are wearisome. It's futile. It's futile to think that you're ever going to be satisfied. Man is not able to tell it. He doesn't even know it. He doesn't even realize how futile it is. The eye is not satisfied with seeing. That's why you go back to pornography every night. You just can't get enough. It never satisfies. It never fills you up. It's not enough. You've got to go back and look at the same stupid images all over again, thinking that's going to do something, but it never does. And it's not just guys with pornography. It's people all over the world with TikTok. Now, I'm not don't go out of here and say, well, that preacher's preaching against TikTok. TikTok, I look at some of the craziness on there, but do you know how many people, and it's all over the world, are sitting everywhere all over the world right now, just constant flipping. From one TikTok picture to the next. You know why? Because the eye's never full. It's never full. The ear never hears enough. Look at this. It says, nor is the ear filled with hearing. Now that is just all the things that we just listen to. Everybody's got earbuds on. Everybody on the airplane, everybody in London, everybody in the United got earbuds. If you don't have earbuds, you got earpods on. And you're listening. Do you realize you can download unlimited books, unlimited music? You can even listen, they charge you to download sounds. Well, I've never been walking around thinking, I'd just like to hear what rain sounds like. So, it's just great, just constant. Why? Because we're never satisfied. We never reach the place where we feel like, enough, I've gotten it. Now watch, and let me give you Solomon's evaluation. I am flying through this stuff, but let me begin in verse 9 with his he's going to evaluate this. This which has been is which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. So there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one might say, see this, it is new? Already it has existed for the ages which were before us. That's his evaluation. Nothing new. He comes and he says, I set my mind to explore. I'm going to find out something out there that will eventually satisfy me in my life, my eyes, my ears, my mind, my heart, my soul. And yet as he sets out, he says there's nothing that does it. Nothing. That's his evaluation of himself. He says, this is what I spent my life doing. Now watch the estimation of why nothing satisfies. Look down, if you will, here to verse 13. And I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted. He says this is what we busy ourselves with, trying to find something. Well, if I can't play golf, God won't make me happy, then maybe tennis will. And if I can't play tennis, then maybe I'll go and I'll start pickleball. And if I'm no good at pickleball, let me go and see if I can pick up, a game of basketball somewhere. And that's not going to make me happy. Maybe I can go and try out for softball. We just go from thing to thing to thing. And y'all are so quiet. Amen. That's life. We run from collecting this thing. Well, we collect these little China dolls. Then we collect this porcelain. Then we collect these things over here. Then we go over here and we collect these things. And we think, well, I got a house full of junk. Let me tell you something. Your kids are going to sell them, every one of them, for 50 cents each. And you probably paid $200 for each one of them. Because, you know why? Because it's not worth a blooming thing. It's all going to burn up. Anyway. That's what he's saying. He's saying it's all vanity. I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun. Behold, all is vanity, striving after what is crooked. Now he comes to man. What is crooked, he's twisted is literally the word. He's speaking of man's fallen nature. My nature is twisted, and I can't straighten it out. You're a sinner, and you can't do anything about your sin. You may run a business of 300 or 400 people, and you may bring in something like $50 million a year, but there's not a stinking thing you can do about the fact that I am hooked on a bottle, and I can't get off it. Huh. What is lacking cannot be counted. I can't count what I don't have. There are a lot of things in life we don't have. He says it's like sitting around trying to count what you hadn't got. It's meaningless. It's nothing. It amounts absolutely to nothing. What is twisted, I can't deal with my own sin. Life is miserable. Now I'm going to do something. I'm going to read you some of the smartest men that have ever lived. I'm going to just do a couple of them, then I'll wrap this up. I'm going to show you two reasons why Solomon got himself in this place. But I want you to listen to what some of the smartest minds of all the ages have said. Sir Francis Bacon, who was great academician, brilliant mind, most brilliant mind of his day, and an artist, said this: life is just really filled with suffering and despair. Martin Heidegger, in his book, Sein and Zeit, Being and Time, said, man experiences a sense of having been thrown into life, not knowing where he came from or where he is going. He lives in meaninglessness, and he is in terror in the here and now. Boy, that's our world today. Number 3, Jean-Paul Sartre said this, the existentialist. He said in his book, he gave the title Being and Nothingness, and he said that's life. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist and student of Freud, said this: despair is the most prevailing spirit of our times. Rollo May, the famous New York psychologist, said this: on the basis of my clinical practice as well as that of my psychological and psychiatric colleagues, the chief problem of people, they are empty. Viktor Frankl. This is a pretty fascinating guy. I just know a little bit about his life. He was a Viennese Jew who studied. He was really Freud's prize student, and he really kind of undid all that Freud had done. He was a Jew, lived during the time of the Nazi party in Germany, was arrested by the Nazis, stripped naked. Hitler wanted to humiliate him because he couldn't control him. So he stripped him naked and brought him into a full courtroom of people and stood him before the judge. And Viktor Frankl said, you can take everything I've got, but what you can't do is you can't take me. I want you to listen to what he said. It's kind of an interesting statement by him. The state of inner emptiness is at present one of the major challenges to psychiatry. That's what Solomon was saying 3,000 years ago. He's saying life is empty, it's fruitless, it's despairing, it's meaningless, it has nothing of value in it if you're living life, even if you're successful and you're living it out of sync spiritually. That's the whole of this book. everything he's going to say. And you say, well, now how in the world? Because I didn't go through this because of time, and I'm still over time. You remember, God appears to Solomon twice. Twice in the night, God appears to him. Now, you just think about this. You think about going home, going to bed tonight, and at about 3 o'clock in the morning, something wakes you up, and you sit up, and God is standing there, and he says, why don't you ask me whatever you will, and I'll give it to you. That's what he does with Solomon. Then he comes before Solomon a second time, and he does, again, he wakes him up in the night, and he tells him he's thankful for the prayer that Solomon prayed. Have you ever prayed a prayer where God woke you up in the night and said, hey, that was a great prayer, by the way? That's what Solomon does. That's what God does to Solomon. He wakes him up. And you say, how in the world could a man get that far off base? Now, are you still with me? Okay, 2 of you are. I want you to go to 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 3, and I want to show you something. Because this is where Solomon is going to pray, and then God is going to come and ask him, you know, what is it that you want? Tell me what you want, and I'm going to give it to you. And Solomon says, I want wisdom to lead your people. Who in the world can lead your people if they don't have wisdom? And God says, man, because you didn't ask for riches or long life, because you didn't ask for, victory over your enemies and discernment to understand just, behold, I've done according to your words. He says, I've given you wisdom and discerning heart. And he said, beyond that, I'm going to give you everything else that you didn't ask for. Well, that's this chapter. You can read 1 Kings chapter 3 when you get home. But I want you to listen to 2 things, because if you're not careful, you'll pass over this. This has huge implications. One is rationalization. Look at the first verse of 1 Kings chapter 3 when you read, Solomon formed a marriage alliance. Well, okay, that's fine. He's going to get married. He's going to make an alliance. We know that all these kings marry people that are going to benefit their kingdom and their rule. So who does he make an alliance with? With Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Uh-oh. Didn't God say not to do that? Didn't God say, I delivered you from those folks down there? You were 400 years in the house of bondage, and I delivered you out. Don't you ever go back down there to those people. You don't trust in them. You don't depend on them. You don't look to them to do anything. And what is it that Solomon does? The first thing he does is he takes Pharaoh's daughter and he's going to move her. He brought her to the city of David until he finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. He rationalized, well, I've got to have a political ally. Egypt's pretty strong. Egypt's got a lot of stuff I'm going to need. I'm going to do a tremendous amount of building. I've got a lot of things that I need to depend on, and they've got it, and I just might as well make. And we rationalize in our lives things that God has said, don't do that. Then there's the justification. We just justify everything. Verse 3. Still the same chapter, 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 3. Now Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David. That is, he loved God. He was living out the word of God like his father David had done. David is always considered a man after God's own heart, all through Scripture. He sinned, he made mistakes, he failed. Yes, but God always remembers him favorably. Isn't that what you want? Well, brother, I can tell you I do. What I don't want him to do is remember my sin. And so he walks like it, and you just love to hear that until you read this word, except. Except he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. What is that? It's the worship of idols. Now, I'm not saying this to be funny, but I'm going to give you a very plain equivalent to that. I love my wife, and I only run around on her on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. That's what he's saying. Oh, I love God. But I go over here to these things a couple of days a week, and I worship these things over here as well. Now, that's what God thinks of it. things that grab a hold of our heart and get our heart, things that get a hold of us, things that pull us toward them, things that begin to capture our imagination and our attention like that. And we think that coming down to church once every 3 to 4 weeks is going to keep life in balance. Coming down to church once in a while to keep life in balance is like taking your car with a busted carburetor down here to Anthony's, running it through the car wash, thinking that's going to make it better. There's an issue on the inside that's got to be dealt with, not your pretty performance on the outside. And so Solomon says, life is empty. Let's stand.